I'm always very careful of giving because it's quite helpful to tyrants, and I have quite literally seen some of my graduates of this course on tyrants sitting at the right-hand side of tyrants. But I've looked you over very carefully. I don't see any would-be tyrants. If you were 15, 16, I probably wouldn't give this talk, but whatever days of tyranny you've had, they are probably in the past. So, let's look at tyrants. And let's first of all be sure what we're talking about. Because I also want to look at what's happening in Syria, what is happening in Egypt, and then I think some of this will make more sense. First of all, tyrants are dominant individuals. So we have a lot of nasty regimes that are not led by tyrants. Democracy, dictatorship, tyrants are very different. So tyrants are a very specialized kind of leadership characterized by the fact that one leader is dominant, they are dictatorial, and they are repressive. It'll make sense when we look at some of the 20th century tyrants. And I'm not going to go through all of them. You're pretty familiar. Hitler, Stalin, Mao, Fidel Castro, the Shah of Iran, Pinochet, Saddam Hussein, Pol Pot, Muammar Gaddafi, and so on. So the 20th century had scores of tyrants at various periods. When we look at this century, there are not many tyrants left, interestingly enough. We've got a rather elderly Raul Castro, an even more elderly Robert Mugabe. We've got baby Kim in North Korea. And you've got to be very careful of Mr. Kim. I don't know if you saw, he executed his ex-girlfriend, and then he executed his uncle. So don't mess around with tyrants. Then we've got Khomeini in Iran and Bashar al-Assad in Syria. There are a few more, but they're not many. There are a couple more in South Asia. There are a couple more in Africa. If we look at them, we can see that at least 4 of the 5 major tyrants are nearing the end of their regime. Certainly Robert Mugabe and Bashar al-Assad are possibly approaching their end of their term. And it's very interesting because when the uprising in Syria began, and you turned on Fox and CNN and everybody, they all said Bashar al-Assad is going to fall sooner rather than later. He's a minority Alawite. He has very little support. He's not nearly as ruthless as his father and grandfather. He's not going to survive. I argued almost alone that Bashar al-Assad will be with us for a long time. And I think after I've showed you some of the dynamics of tyranny, you will understand why. Now, 3 important questions. How do tyrants come to power? How do they lose power? And what is the future for tyranny?